Hi everyone, my name's Greg Harradine and welcome to episode 9 of my Good Art, Bad Art series, where I discuss various musical creations, occasionally literary creations, and try to figure out are they examples of good art or bad art. Today, I'll be looking at the album Michigan by Sufjan Stevens. These videos are not edited. You can see they are just 8 minutes of my thoughts coming out as I think them, thinking in real time. And I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what you think about my videos and your opinion on what I'm discussing. And please subscribe too if you're not already a subscriber. Anyway, Michigan by Sufjan Stevens. This album to me is, it occupies a very special place in my heart, in my memory, because I remember distinctly the day I bought it. I walked into HMV in Norwich. This must have been probably 2005, 2006. And I was just looking through the CDs and the album cover caught my eye. Just a sort of map, saying, Michigan, with a bit of other pastoral artwork. I think a fish, maybe some trees. Anyway, I thought, what a strange title of an album and album artwork. Michigan. What's this? Is it about the state of Michigan? I knew nothing about Sufjan Stevens. I bought the album on the album artwork alone and absolutely loved it. It was just an astonishing album. And I'll try to explain why. I'll just give a bit of background about the album first. So it was released in 2003 and it is really a celebration or an exploration of Sufjan Stevens' home state of Michigan. He grew up, I believe, in Detroit, and as you probably know, Detroit is one of these cities that really had a huge decline. Over the last decades, a big decline. Hopefully, it's on the up again now. But the album explores both the declining state. The declining state of the state of Michigan, and also the nature and people, sort of the ordinary people who live there. Let me just read out a list of the instruments that Sufjan Stevens plays on this album, because it's quite astonishing, really. You sort of think of him as obviously being a singer, guitarist, but here's a full list of the instruments he plays on this album. Oboe, English horn, piano, electric organ, electric piano, banjo, acoustic and electric guitar, bass, vibraphone, xylophone, glockenspiel, recorders, wood flute, whistles, drums, percussion, vocals. Wow, a true multi-instrumentalist. He also was fully in charge of the mixing and the production of the album. It was recorded in his home, in churches, in schools. And the fact that this album is so entirely his creation. Yes, he had various guest musicians on as well, but it really feels like it's him. It's Sufjan speaking directly to us. And if you haven't already guessed, I would definitely say this is an album that is an example of very good art. Yes, and as I often think, how can I put this into words? Great art comes out as what seems like a true expression of the artist's intent. Yeah, there's no element of trying to be this or trying to be that. It's just pure expression. It feels to me like this album couldn't have been expressed in any other way, if that makes sense. A bit more about the album. Let me read you a very short part of a review from Pitchfork by Brandon Stosoy, which I think really captures it very well. Michigan is a frost-bound tone poem in which average people live out their victories and defeats with a shadowy, dignified grace. I think that's a really good summation of the album. I'm not sure about frost-bound. That's the only term I wouldn't totally agree with. Yes, there are frosty moments, but there are also lots of warm moments too. Musically, very interesting. So the album has, I think it's 15 tracks, and only four of them only 4 of them are in 4/4 time. Only 4 of them have 4 beats per bar. That's quite unusual because a lot of music, especially popular music, nearly always has 4 beats per bar. Only 4 of the album's 15 tracks have 4 beats per bar. The majority have 3 beats, or groups of 3 or 6 or 9, which I find really interesting. A couple are even in 5/4. They have 5 beats per bar. But yes, now why did Sufjan Stevens move towards this feeling of 3s? Well, for me, my explanation is somehow 3 feels more like a kind of circular time. It has a curve to it, rather than 4. 4 seems incredibly square, whereas 3 has more of a swaying curve-like rhythm, a more watery rhythm, one may say. This album is largely one of water. Michigan, the Great Lakes state, it's surrounded. Well, there's lots and lots of water in the landscape of Michigan, and I think that has a big part to play. Truly, very unusual for the majority of the tracks on an album to be in 3 time, 3 or 6 or perhaps 9. There are hugely interesting layers of patterns on this album. I think he is inspired by minimalism, where you sort of have a pattern that repeats and then changes as we go. Layers of harmonies, layers of different instrumental parts. The album begins with a very moving piano and vocal and a bit of trumpet track called Flint for the unemployed and underpaid. And it ends with, again, the very last thing we hear is piano and trumpet. So I feel like the end is a mirroring of the beginning, or it's almost cyclical in nature. Not quite, but there's a link between the start and the end. Again, this feeling of a curve, of a circle, of something perhaps watery. Other artists have done this, of course. Joanna Newsom, her album Divers, very end of the last track does truly link up with the beginning of the first track. We hear the repeated bird song, and the last word, transcend, she just sings the first syllable, trans, and then the first word of the first song, sending, transcending, it loops around. An idea that also goes back to James Joyce and Finnegan's Wake. Well, I'm practically out of time already. There's so much more I wanted to say. But we're out of time. A fantastic album. I give it a score of 92. Go and listen to it if you don't know it. It's absolutely beautiful. I've been Greg Harradine. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what I should talk about next time. And I'll see you next week. Goodbye.